How do you defeat a massive planet-consuming, life-threatening robot? By creating an equally powerful machine. We're talking about the rivalry between Unicron, the gigantic planet-eating bot, and the universe-loving Primus, who, although smaller than Unicron, is extremely formidable. Yes, we're talking about the same Unicron who was briefly featured in Transformers: The Last Knight, and is gearing up to consume Earth and fight the Autobots in the upcoming film Rise of the Beasts. So, let's explore where Unicron and Primus came from. Why did they become enemies? Who is more daunting? And who overpowered whom? Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. How did it all start? It is chaos and fury given form. It is Unicron. Much before the creation of the universe, there existed the sentient core of the universe called the One. The One created Unicron as his explorer of realms. But Unicron started destroying the realms by consuming them. The One split Unicron in half to create Primus as an opposing force to Unicron's menacing ways. Over the years, Marvel has released several versions of the original story of Unicron and Primus, although the crux of each remains the same. Minute details were changed with every version. So let's look at 3 of these versions to understand the origin story of these two mighty robots. Transformer number 61, The Primal Scream, released in 1984, saw the Keeper divulging Primus's story to Bumblebee, Jazz, and Grimlock. He addresses Primus and Unicron as the gods of light and darkness, respectively. Additionally, Unicron came to be known as the Chaos Bringer, whereas Primus was dubbed the Life Giver. The Keeper says that when the universe was on the verge of its beginning, Primus decided to settle in the omniversal matrix. However, he had one task to take care of, and that was to defeat the Unicron, the last god of darkness. The Keeper says that Unicron's sole existence was to destroy, and he proved to be a powerful opponent to someone as mighty as Primus. Primus was injured in the battle, and his disembodied energy form took the fight to the astral plane, where Unicron followed and continued fighting. Primus was losing his life glow and decided to trick Unicron. He moved back to the physical realm, where Unicron followed blindly, but instead of converting back into their energy forms, Primus confined himself and Unicron into lifeless asteroids, trapping their essence within. As time passed, Primus used his psionic powers to build metal structures on his asteroid and converted into Cybertron. But as Primus evolved, he realized that Unicron also had the same abilities and decided to develop warriors as his last line of defense against Unicron. These warriors came to be known as the Transformers, who could change their forms to become weapons, machines, or vehicles. Primus also implanted his life essence into a genetic matrix, which allowed the creation of other Transformers. The Keeper also unveils that the Matrix was the one thing that Unicron feared and could defeat him. Meanwhile, Unicron used his telepathic link with Primus to evolve into an all-consuming planet that could also change into a Transformer-like robotic being. To break their psychic link, Primus goes into a deep slumber while Unicron searches for him across verses to get his revenge. That was quite an origin story, but in 1984, another slightly different version was released with issue number 74. Transformers Against the Hordes of Unicron. The comic begins with a spirit form of Primus talking about Unicron as the being that destroys every planet, whole galaxies, and even the stuff of space itself, leaving only the void. Primus states that Unicron had swallowed everything, and having satiated his hunger, went into a deep slumber, but he had not been thorough. He left small cosmic crumbs which reacted with each other and exploded. Over trillions of years, they evolved and became the universe as we know it. The sentient core realized that Unicron would go after this universe next, and so he created his ultimate opponent, the yin to Unicron's yang, and named him Primus. When Unicron awoke from his sleep, he could feel the life forms around him, and without thinking twice, he went on a rampage, destroying everything in his path. Primus and Unicron engaged in a dreadful battle that was causing everything around them to be destroyed, which was ironic since Primus was trying to save the universe. Primus came to the conclusion that the only way to save the universe was to trick Unicron at the cost of his own life and imprison their life essences in infertile metal asteroids. As years passed, past, Unicron learned to use his psionic abilities to shape his metal form to interchange between a planet and a transformer. Using this newfound ability, he continued his destructive ways. Primus learned of Unicron's capabilities using their mental connection and shaped his asteroid to evolve into Cybertron. He also designed humanoid robots to mimic Unicron's transformative abilities and armed them with the genetic matrix. But in this version of the comic book, Primus also hints that the only way to destroy Unicron was for the Autobots to unite with the Decepticons and fight as one force. We'll have to wait and watch how this works out in the Rise of the Beasts. Also, as per the Keeper's version, Primus was the one who created Cybertron first, and Unicron followed after learning what Primus had done. But this version says Primus was the one who mimicked Unicron. So, now we have two stories, one told by the Keeper and the other narrated by Primus. The third version was revealed by Unicron in the UK Transformers Comics issue number 150. The story is similar to the other two versions, except Unicron believes that Primus's vulnerability is his concern for life forms across the universe. Hence, when he started altering himself psionically, he chose to build a habitat and robot humanoids to populate Cybertron. Unicron also says that Primus's genetic matrix was passed on from one leader to the other to continue creating life, whereas the other versions claim that each of them already had his life's essence. Here is a fun fact for you all. The genetic matrix is also known as the Allsparks, or the Matrix of Leadership, and was used to bring Optimus Prime back to life in Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen. Now, in each version, it is said that Primus decided to go into a deep slumber to prevent his telepathic link with Unicron. So who took charge when he was unavailable? Primus had an internal mainframe called Vector Sigma. Vector Sigma is a supercomputer acting like the core of Cybertron and the only connection between the Transformers and Primus. Another version of Primus's origin story says that he created 13 Transformers, also known as Primes or the Covenant, who possessed the genetic matrix. The other Transformers were created later, but the Primes became their leaders. Among them was a Prime named Megatronus, the 12th Prime who rose against the other Primes and was dubbed the Fallen. Yes, Transformers: Revenge of the Fallen was created around this premise. The last of the Primes, or its 13th member, was initially called 13, and later came to be known as Optimus Prime, who currently leads the Autobots. On the other hand, Unicron, being an almighty being, took control of his own powers. As Unicron evolved into a planet, he developed quantum supercomputers within his system. These computers helped him calculate probabilities, which allowed him to travel across the multiverses to create voids in each. His computers also keep updating and advancing themselves as time passes, almost like AI and machine learning. Another interesting fact is that both Primus and Unicron could exist across the multiverses and multiple realities. A graphic novel provides valuable insights into the bitter rivalry. How was Unicron defeated? Now that we know how it all basically started, let's dig a little deeper into this rivalry and Unicron's ultimate defeat. The graphic novel titled Transformers: The Covenant of Primus by Justina Robson offered some stimulating perspectives on the Primus-Unicron rivalry and a new origin story. The story is narrated by the third of the 13 Primes, also known as Alpha Trion. Birth of the Transformers. Alpha Trion starts off by speaking about his immediate birth, where he was born an empty piece of metal and slowly he began understanding his surroundings. He soon realized that the metallic surface beneath him was his maker Primus, who he refers to as the Titanic and the demigod in semi-hibernation. Within a few moments of Alpha Trion's birth, Solus, the 4th Prime, appeared beside him with a quake in the ground beneath and a blast of light. The next 9 followed instantly with similar flashes and booms. When 13 arrived, his first act was a salute with his hand raised, which everyone else followed. Alpha Trion speaks of how their first action as a team was unified. With each burst, there was a golden glow that Alpha Trion called Energon. Energon filled the 13 bodies with life and power, while data about Primus and their existence automatically began unfolding in their minds. Primus had given them the complete download of his journey and his life essence. With Primus's job done, he goes into hypersleep, and the 13 get ready to take over his work for him as his successors. Alpha Trion turns to Primus, but feels him fade away. He says that the last feeling they had about Primus was that of quiet faith. Alpha Trion then speaks of how the 13 came to understand the creation of Primus and Unicron. He says that there was one being in existence who thought it was the only one in the universe. But as it explored the galaxies, it found other life forms and began wondering why it was alone. It slowly developed two voices, one which was encouraging and having faith, while the other was restless and relentless, always finding flaws around them. Eventually, these two voices developed as opposites of each other. The reassuring voice called itself Primus, meaning the one or first, and the other called itself Unicron, meaning unique and one. Their opposing views were unguided, which caused them to start fighting with each other. Each considered their way of thinking as being correct and the other wrong. This caused a great rift between them, which led to their physical separation as well. Unicron began his rampage of destruction while Primus tried to stop him and repair the damage. Primus also tried to reconcile with Unicron, but the latter refused to return to his previous form. Primus was outraged by Unicron's reply. This resulted in a fight that went on for billions of years. Their bodies kept modifying themselves as per how they perceived their reality. Unicron wanted to create a void by destroying everything around him, and Primus felt that it was his duty to preserve the universe and stop Unicron. Eventually, Primus realized that they both were equally powerful, and he had to do something different if he truly wanted to destroy Unicron. Thus, Primus decided to change the one variable he had complete control over, which was himself, and decided to take a back seat. He created the 13 Transformers, also known as the Covenant of Primus, and gave them all his abilities and more before falling into hypersleep. Unicron, on the other hand, continued consuming everything in the galaxy, which added to his powers, making him stronger. Every time he was satiated, he turned his gaze to find Primus, but scanned over the Transformers, which was Primus's plan all along. The Transformers can feel Unicron's presence, though they are unable to see him. Primus created the Covenant, giving them not only his ideologies, but also those of Unicron. He didn't want the Transformers to be his spitting image, but rather have the ability to understand their options and choose wisely. Each Transformer was created to be different from the others, with abilities unique to themselves, and Primus's powers were divided equally among them. But the Transformers were clueless about how they would approach their enemy. How was Unicron defeated? The Transformers were aware that they only had one shot at wiping out Unicron, because once he learned of their existence, he would easily destroy them. Fortunately, they had the record of Primus and Unicron's past battles, which they started studying to find Unicron's weaknesses. The Primes began to process how their abilities could be used singly and as a combined force against Unicron. They decided that based on their abilities, they would divide themselves into three groups: the warriors, the strategists, and the free agents who could fight, but more so would look into the aspects of the war. Micronus, Alpha Trion, Liege Maximo, and Quintus were team strategists, while the remaining, that is 13, Solus, Alchemist, and Nexus, became the free agents. Solus wielded her power of creation to build them a simulated image of Unicron in a hollow suit, where the Transformers practiced their battle plans. Slowly, they became aware that there was no way of killing Unicron, as he was like a god and showed no weakness. They even considered burying him in the heart of a star to be fused out, but Unicron was too powerful for it all, and the Transformers lacked the capacity. Alternatively, they feel that if they kill Unicron, it could also mean the end of Primus, since they were one being once. Ultimately, they concluded that the only way to defeat Unicron was to put him in a hibernation similar to that of Primus's. This way, although alive, he would not be able to continue on his evil path. The Transformers also felt that they should achieve this before Unicron could create his own set of Dark Primes, but Micronus felt that Unicron was too egotistic for that. The Transformers asked Solus to create multiple weapons to counter Unicron's power, including the Cyber Caliber, which was a double-bladed sword capable of disintegrating into smaller blades, and the Requiem Blaster, which took its power from stars to empower its plasma beams. They even set up a supercomputer called Vector Sigma to help them process Unicron's every move. The final plan was explained by Alchemist, who decided that 13's spark was the closest to Primus's, and that it would perfectly counter that of Unicron's waveform to neutralize each other. This would cause Unicron's spark to feel threatened and shut down, putting him in a hypersleep just like Primus. However, they would also have to put his part of Unicron into an infinite loop to conceal the passage of time. Otherwise, Unicron's body would sense that the threat is gone and wake up. They also devised a plan to retrieve and revive 13 using Quintus's Ember Stone in case his spark would shut down too. Finally, with a plan in place, Victor opened a portal to Unicron, and the Transformers charged with all guns blazing. They caught Unicron in the midst of consuming a moon and attacked him. Unicron was caught by surprise, but being so almighty, he struck back. What we must mention here is that Unicron is not in his planet form yet. He is still in his godlike frame, which he evolved into after physically separating from Primus. Alpha Trion describes him as an obscene industrial nightmare, smoke oozing from his stack, raw energies radiating their excess out of him in bursts, and pulses of light, Belchazov gases briefly flaring into fires, or spitting out of his joints in sprays of obscene wastage. Alpha further stated that it felt like they had entered hell. A wave of dark energon that emanated from Unicron was the first to hit them. It was something their simulation could not have prepared for, although they had the knowledge of it. As the Transformers faltered, Megatronus took charge and aimed for Unicron's eyes. This gave the others the needed boost, and Prima and Onyx launched their attacks and ushered everyone to hurry with the plan. With one swift motion, Unicron got his hands on Onyx, but the others continued charging. Vector soon began opening microportals into Unicron's mainframe. Solus was the first to enter, and Maximo followed. On the outside, Unicron was posing a challenging threat, which they were prepared to counter, but the extent of his radiant beams and pure raw energy was tough to match. During one fight, a single beam from Unicron destroys half of Alchemist's weapons. As the first continued, the next to enter Unicron's interior through Vector's portal was Alpha Trion. As the fight continued, the next to enter Unicron's interior through Vector's portal was Alpha Trion. Alpha Trion broke his foot, landing in a cramped space. Unicron's overwhelming ideologies started making Alpha Trion rethink his purpose in the fight and started filling him with negativity. He began feeling it was all pointless and that he should simply give up and let Unicron have his way because he was right. Then, suddenly, he heard 13's voice saying, "All are one," which acted like a beam of positive energy and jolted him back. Alpha Trion immediately severed the joined part of Unicron's neural net to his left weaponry array and disabled his left arm. On the outside, a shockwave hurled by Unicron shocked everybody and sent them reeling back, but the ones on the inside start damaging Unicron's internal parts. With every internal attack, Unicron's body jerked and spasmed. It was the only reason he couldn't finish off the Transformers left on the outside, who were convulsing from the shockwave. Maximo even started to annoy Unicron by engaging him in a conversation that made Unicron so mad that he stabbed his own neck to get his hands on Maximo. Finally, with great efforts, an injured Vector opens another portal for 13 to enter Unicron's core. 13 reached in Unicron's spark. Unicron ceased his movements and clasped his heart. His dark energon field and other activities shut down, and his body altered into a planet-like structure, just like Primus's. Finally, his lights went out, and he was in status as planned. That was definitely one hell of a battle. Although Primus didn't directly defeat Unicron, he laid the seeds of his destruction in the form of the 13 Transformers, and won! Who is more powerful, Primus or Unicron? So, let's quickly summarize what we know of Primus and Unicron's nature and abilities. Primus and Unicron are the stark opposites of each other. While Primus is the protector of peace, the life giver, or the god of light, Unicron is the planet eater, chaos bringer, or god of darkness. Unicron believes in destroying everything around him to be the sole entity across the multiverse, and Primus wants life forms to exist and take their natural course of action. We also know that both had psionic abilities that allowed them to convert themselves from asteroids to planets. Primus went on to create a habitable planet and the Transformers, whereas Unicron could shapeshift between a humanoid, robot, and a planet. Also, both can exist at the same time across the multiverses. Now, theoretically speaking, Unicron should have been more powerful, as the comics mention that each planet, moon, and galaxy consumed by Unicron added to his powers, and he has been active for over 1 billion years while Primus went into his dormant state. However, before they took their planetary forms, Primus and Unicron had unbeatable powers that led them into an impasse each time. None was able to defeat or kill the other. They both also created their life's essence, Primus developed the Matrix of Leadership, and Unicron built his Death Matrix, which was again an equal match. Even though Primus put himself into hypersleep, he had created the Transformers and enabled them with the power to continue against Unicron. And as we know, the Transformers matched up to Unicron's forces. So, to conclude, we feel that both Primus and Unicron are equally mighty, and it seems like the only way to defeat them is to render them inactive by putting them in hibernation. Transformers: Rise of the Beasts is bringing back the deadliest villain ever. Now let's talk about the big upcoming release. Transformer Rise of the Beasts is all set to bring back the gigantic, planet-eating, and deadly supervillain Unicron to screens on June 9, 2023. And we are ecstatic about what this movie will present. Although Transformers: The Last Knight did give us a glimpse of Unicron's horns, it seemed to have a completely different storyline, where the Earth was built around Unicron. But director Stephen Cable Jr. has set Rise of the Beasts in 1994, where Unicron is coming from space, ready to consume life as we know it. Whether the two movies will have any connection or not is difficult to say. But what we are excited to watch are the Autobots fighting shoulder to shoulder with the Maximals against Unicron. They say don't judge a movie by its trailer, but this one seems like a promising, action-packed, badass sci-fi adventure. Primus and Unicron are the supreme characters in the Transformers universe, offering fans some intriguing storylines to dive into. But we do have a few questions for you relating to Primus. Does Primus have the ability to shapeshift into a giant superbot, which he has been hiding from us all along? Also, can we hope to see him in the new Transformers movie? If you have theories on this, do discuss them with us in the comments below. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.